Hello there, and welcome to Career Stories Live. I'm sorry, I can still hear the music, but bizarrely. Right. Don't know what's going on here. There's lots and lots of music going on in the background.
I don't hear it at all.
Do you not hear it? Okay.
No.
Okay, we're done.
What's happening?
Okay. Hello. Are you here now, John?
Hello? Yes, I am.
Hi.
Can
I've
you
got
hear me?
no idea. Yes, I can. I have no idea what was going on there. Very sorry about that. I could hear the live going on in the background. It's all very strange.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me
this
real
is
time?
very. I think so.
Okay. Well, let's talk. Do, 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 do.
Okay, John, can we hear you in real
Hi,
time?
Sarah.
Hello.
You can hear me in real. No. Uh-oh.
This is so bizarre. Okay, let me just.
Submitted for your approval. Sarah Burgess about to begin a live podcast on LinkedIn when suddenly technical issues interfere.
Okay, John, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can, right. I think that for some reason LinkedIn was going off somewhere in the background.
How
Um,
many fingers am I holding up?
you've got two fingers now. So Jeff saying,
Okay.
nice shirt, Sarah. Yes, thank you, Jeff. Okay, we're here. And Lubna was saying, I can't hear any music. I can hear both of you loud and clear. Oh, there was something very odd going on with my laptop there. So I'm very sorry about that. That's never happened before. And Celia's saying, I can hear you both clearly. Excellent. Looks like we're back on track. So thank you very much,
All right.
everybody. And really sorry about that. I don't know what was going on. Okay, so welcome to Career Stories Live, as I was starting to say earlier on, and this is the second episode. So I'm here today with John Finnegan. Say hi, John. Thank you for coming along.
Hi. Oh,
So
thanks for inviting
excellent.
me.
That is really cool. So I met John on LinkedIn probably a couple of years ago now during the start of COVID.
Yeah.
I don't quite know when exactly, but I know that John started commenting on my posts. He pointed out a typo, which I was really grateful for, although he was very kind about it, and just kind of thought that I would like to know that. So that was really, really good.
I
And then
did
it's
it
been
in a
engaging since.
message, not on the post,
You did, yes, you
which is
didn't call me
important.
out. So
Yeah.
that definitely was. So yeah, so John's been really supportive of my LinkedIn posts over the years, and it's been really interesting hearing about his career sabbatical via his LinkedIn posts. So these live sessions, the point of them really is for me just to talk to people about their careers, how they've got to where they are now, what they're looking to do next, and hopefully just share some career tips with people. So, John, over to you. Let's just start talking about your career story. So, I saw that you mentioned it as a maze earlier on. So, how did you start out with your career?
Oh, well, I when I was a kid, I decided I wanted to be an actor, and so I did that in high school, and I got a degree in it in college. And my first job after college was acting with this small group that traveled from school to school every day, and did shows about Abraham Lincoln and David Copperfield. Um, that doesn't pay very well, and so I moved into the city of Chicago and tried auditioning for plays that did pay better and had difficulty doing that. I ended up opening a children's theater. I found a location where I could write and direct and appear in kids' plays, and the theater owners were willing to let me use their theater because they didn't use it on Saturday afternoons or during the day. So that worked out for a while. ran out of money, um, and ended up. I worked in restaurants for a while because that's what actors in the city of Chicago do for a while.
I think that was one of the posts that I saw about you talked about pies and the secret of pies in Chicago, and I didn't know that pizzas were called pies, so that was the first learning point for me there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so and that's where I learned a lot of that in bartending and the other side of the bar too, and that's probably a whole nother story. But um, I ended up working in construction, and I liked that. I was learning new things, and it was exciting, and so I was learning how to build things and remodeling. It was a good time for it in Chicago. There's a lot of work going on. Ended up moving to the suburbs, falling in love, and starting a remodeling business where I would finish people's basements. So they'd have unfinished basements, and I'd put in walls and electricity and plumbing and lighting, and you know, basically, as my very young son at the time described it, I made really cool Nintendo rooms. So people could go down there and play their video games.
Excellent.
Um, and I did that for a while, and I grew the business, and I had employees, and it was like, this is great, but it was a lot of work. And from one year to the next, I doubled my revenue, I doubled my sales, and my personal revenue stayed the same. So I was working a lot harder, but I had kind of reached a point where I either had to stop doing the work myself and just focus on sales and administration, or stop. And so I decided to stop. And so I applied for some sales jobs, and I took some of the anybody can get it sales jobs for a while, and then I ended up at UPS as a sales rep there. And at UPS, I got to meet a lot of people who were managing warehouses, who were in charge of supply chain, who th- they were the ones who, in their manufacturing companies or their sales organizations, they were the ones who were making sure that the right stuff got to the right place at the right time. And I really liked that. And one of my customers that I helped quite a bit at UPS actually offered me a job to come and work as a business process manager. And I had made some changes to their shipping department, and they wanted me to make the same sort of changes to their other departments. Excuse me. Um, from there, I went to a company and spent 10 years at a chemical manufacturing company focused primarily on supply chain and logistics, and really enjoyed that. And we were able to, my team was able to bring together um, or to build bridges with other teams. So there used to be like a lot of silos between the departments, and my team really got good at going out and building bridges and breaking down the silos, and it really made things a lot more efficient and a lot more fun. Um, from there, I took a job with another chemical manufacturer, a very different company, and then COVID came along. Hi, COVID.
COVID, yeah. So that was an interesting switch. So I think most of my clients, I would say, work with in an organization first and then go down the self-employed route. And you kind of did it the other way around, which is
Yeah,
really,
right.
that's cool.
Yeah. Well, it's the way I did it. So,
Yeah,
good or bad, it's
that's what
the way.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So,
So anyway, so back to COVID.
oh yeah, and life is going on too. At this point, I've got three grown kids and a wife of 30 years, and COVID comes along, and I've also got cancer, and so I'm close to 60 years old with cancer, and I'm sitting in all these meetings where everyone's saying we're really not worried about COVID because it really only is dangerous for older people with medical issues. And I'm thinking, huh, that's me.
Right.
um, Years before, it's just kind of a personal project. I had started it was like a journaling project where I started tracking down the days in my life that made a difference in who I was and how I saw the world. And I referred to it as days that matter. There you go. And
There you go. So there's your hashtag.
yeah, that's my hashtag now. And when I left that company, because it really became untenable after a while, um, I realized that I needed to start focusing again on those days that matter. And I started posting some of those on LinkedIn, and I enjoyed doing that. And I was encouraging other people to do the same sorts of things because what I was finding was that by focusing on how I got where I am, I became much more comfortable with who I was. And I was interviewing sporadically for jobs. And when I started out, I was trying to tick their check boxes. Does that make sense? I was
Yeah.
trying to be the person they wanted to find, right?
Mm.
And as I worked on this Days That Matter project and just became more and more comfortable with who I am and how I got here, and and some days saying, "Oh my God, that makes sense. That's why I do that. That's why I talk like that, or think like that." Um, the more comfortable I became with that, the more interviewers stopped focusing on ticking their check boxes and seemed more interested in finding out who I was and, and thinking to themselves, how does this person fit into my organization?
That's excellent. And
And so,
I just make a point on
well,
hashtags. So just in case anyone's not aware, so the hashtags you can set up on LinkedIn. So anyone can set up a hashtag. You just add it to your post. So what John's done is he's created this hashtag and puts that on his post, and it means then you can click on that hashtag and you will be presented on LinkedIn with anything that has that hashtag in. So likely lots of John's posts you'll find there. So it's really good. You can then follow that hashtag. It's a really quick way of finding that content and a great way of engaging people. So that's it. So do you want to carry on with your story, John?
oh, sure.
Mhm.
Well, I think, I finally got to a place where I found a company, or this company found me. Um, and when I was talking with the hiring managers, I was very comfortable with who I was, and they were excited about who I was, and and by being more comfortable with my own story, I was able to start doing things. I had written and illustrated a kid's book a few years ago, and so I did a couple more of those. I'm sorry, I should. I know you know. I was on sabbatical for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
So with the COVID, I thought, I don't have to work. I've got an amazing amount of privilege, and and I understand that, but I didn't have to work, and I really didn't want to take a job that was just going to fill in, and so I really had to, focus on what matters to me, and so that's where Days That Matter led
yeah,
me was what
yeah,
matters to me.
yeah. And I think it was really good as well when you switched your profile to say you were having a career sabbatical, so you made it much more, I don't know, positive experience, I guess. So rather than focusing on the I haven't got
Yeah,
a job, you were like, I'm on sabbatical and this is some of the great stuff I'm
right.
doing. And it's a really good way of framing it, isn't it? And you just talked a little bit about one of the questions about your view of on values and in their importance in your career. So I'm guessing from what you just said, that was really important. Ultimately, that's what ended you up with this job because it's a company that you share the values with. They found you. You're talking about yourself.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I had learned that um, I when I was at UPS. UPS is a company that's very structured, and they list their values and they publish them and they print them and they post them, and you have an employee handbook and you talk about them. I
Mm,
mean, it's a requirement at every meeting to talk about something from the employee handbook. Okay, that's how you start meetings at UPS, at least when I
right.
was there. And then I went to work for this customer, which was a startup working on an IPO, and the culture was so different. And instead of values, there were, you know, rules like if you get cut, don't bleed on the product. I mean, there just a world of difference. And so when I found Cabot, that was the chemical manufacturer that I was at for 10 years. I sat there in the interview room, and on the wall, they listed their values. It's respect, it's
Yeah.
courage, and and I thought that's what I've been missing. That became very clear to me in that moment. That's what I've been missing, and so that's always been something that I look for in a company and in people too. But some clarity on what their values are.
Yeah, and how about
Unfortunately,
how they actually, do they actually live those values? I guess that's the thing, isn't it?
that's the unfortunate
Yeah,
part because
yeah,
then when I left Cabot and I went to another chemical company, they said, "Yeah, these are our values." But I got there and it's like, no, staying out of trouble is really the priority here. That's really the value here that people look at, and so that's the challenge. People talk about it, but then when I was on sabbatical, it was an opportunity where I could do things where not only could I work on books, um, I had an opportunity just very randomly came up with where I could tutor kids in math, and I realized during this time that what really drives me is I want to make a difference. I want to have an impact. I mean, just like that kid who wanted to be on stage and have everybody applauding and saying,
Mm.
the standing ovation. I want to make a difference, and I want to know that when I leave someplace, it's better somehow than when I got there. Um, and so, it occurred to me that with the kids, you can make a difference. The metaphor I came up with was, the airplane that takes off from Washington D.C. to California, but if you turn it 1 degree north, it's going to end up in Alaska. And so the earlier on in a person's life that you can make a difference or have a positive impact, the greater the impact is over the course of their lifetime. And so I found this organization that recycles or upcycles computer hardware, and they build computer labs in schools in rural Kenya. And it was a young woman who came from there, came from poverty, and just worked really hard in school and ended up with a scholarship to a college in the United States, got a degree in computer science, and now spends 6 months a year going back and forth and setting up these computer labs and hiring and training local teachers and teaching thousands of kids things that they never would have learned otherwise. And that's the sort of thing that I got to do on my sabbatical. And I golfed. And I golfed. So
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people in in the interviews, some people say, "Wow, that's really weird." That you were doing that. Weren't you, getting a supply chain certification or taking a class in this or that? And it's like, no, I was making a difference. And so when I found the company I am at now, they thought that was cool. They thought that was great. That it's like supply chain has changed so much in the last 3 years and continues to change every day that reading a lot of books about it is really not going to be as advantageous as being courageous about it and being clear on what your vision is and then trying to make a difference and then trying to make things better. Does
Yeah.
that make
That's really, really
sense?
interesting. Yeah, yeah, no, it's really good, and I think it proves that point, doesn't it? When you are out of work, that actually doing something different can be really helpful, and that has indirectly helped you get a job in the industry you were in by recognizing your values and identifying the company and all of that, which not the obvious choice, but definitely has
Right.
worked for you.
Yes, it did work for me,
Yeah.
and it's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the book? What made you, so you mentioned that you'd already written a couple, then you wrote another one during your sabbatical and got that published. So what was that process like?
Oh, that was
Mm.
I love doing that, but it's very isolating.
Mm.
And so at the beginning of the sabbatical, isolation was good, but after a while, I need people around me.
Yeah.
uh, so because I do the drawing on the computer and I do the writing, and so I would spend 12, 14 hours a day drawing, and
Mm.
I'm not an artist. I don't draw. I had to do it because I wrote a kids book, and I wanted,
Yeah.
so
Either
that
employ someone or do it.
yeah, right. It's like, well, I could learn how to do this, and I decided if I learned how to do this, then I could use it for other things, and I could use it
Mm.
for more books. So it was, that was kind of like an early on investment. Um, the challenge with that is I keep getting better, and I don't say that to brag, but I say that because I'll get to page 14 and have to go back to pages 1 through 6 to
So
use
bring them up
whatever
to the
technique I
standard.
learned while drawing 14, right? Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, that's an interesting challenge. So you mentioned acting, and I know I saw a post where you said that appeared on Chicago Is it Chicago Medical?
Chicago Med. Yeah, there
Yeah.
are. Dick Wolf is a producer in the U.S. and he's done all the Law and Order and SVU shows, and um, and then he started three shows in Chicago. There's Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, and Chicago Med, and they're all
Okay,
filmed
right.
at a studio in Chicago. And just through different Facebook friends, my Facebook friends are mostly from grade school and high school, but through different Facebook friends, somebody had posted that they've got a Facebook page, and they look for background players. And I thought, well, that'd be cool to do, and I actually have time to do that sort of thing. So
Excellent.
I started submitting photos for that, and I got called in for Chicago PD to be a background player a couple times, and then Chicago Med was looking for like a core group of nurses and doctors. And it's always been a dream. When I was a kid, there was a television commercial. It's an actor who played a doctor on TV, and he says, "I am not a doctor, but I've played one on TV. When I get a headache, I take Excedrin." And I thought that was the silliest concept for advertising I had ever seen or heard. But in my family, with my siblings, it's become kind of a running joke. I'm not a doctor, but I've played one on TV. And so when I heard about Chicago Med, I thought, this is my opportunity. This is my one chance. I could be in the background as a doctor.
Did you
And
tell them beforehand, or did you just let them see it and find you?
I, um, as a background player, you learn not to talk
You're right.
because it's like, the expression is there are no small roles, only small actors and background. So,
Excellent.
but it was
So did
fun, and the people that I got to meet were the type of people that I kind of grew up with. And a lot of them were younger than me. Some were my age or older, but it was just a lot of very creative people trying to do something, trying to make a living doing something too. So it was that was really a neat experience. That was a lot of fun.
that's good. Then you mentioned on your post about this actually, carpentry, computers, summer jobs in college, stubbing, and getting weird. So what is that all about, John?
Okay. Well, I mean, when I finished my first year of college, I decided I didn't want to work in pizza places anymore. Okay, so I thought, okay, I'm a college guy now. I'm 18 years old. I know what's wrong with this world. I need a real job, and I ended up getting a job at a very large residential facility for mentally challenged adults, and it was completely a support role. A lot of hygiene care, a lot of making sure that people are being fed, that they're getting the right food, that they're being cared for, that they're dressed, that they're bathed. Um, but also, and this is I think indicative of the times. One of the rules was that as a male, if there was ever any violence, there would be an announcement for a code green or code blue. No, code green, I think it was, or Dr. Green, paging Dr. Green to the cafeteria meant that there was a fight in the cafeteria and all male employees had to respond.
Right, okay.
Um, okay, so that happened, and I was one of five male employees who actually responded and showed up. And that there was one of the residents had been threatening to hit somebody with his bike chain. And we found him, and when we found him, he was calmed down. He was standing in line at the cafeteria, and the bike chain was hanging out of his pocket. And so me and these other four guys, are saying, well, what do we do? And, since I know how to solve all the problems of the world because I'm an 18-year-old with a year of college behind me, I say, I've got this. And I walk up to him. The chain's hanging out of his left pocket. I tap him on the right shoulder. He looks. I grab the chain out of his pocket. Done. And I look back at the guys and it's kind of like, this was not so hard. What I wasn't paying attention to was the fact that he was standing in front of the silverware. And so he
Oh,
reached down and grabbed a butter knife and spun around and caught me in the chest with it. Not deep, just deep enough to stick in the curdle.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I went to the clinic and a couple stitches, and everything was fine. But I quit that job without notice. And what
Unsurprisingly,
I
yeah.
found, yeah, but what I found in applying for other jobs as an 18-year-old, I was automatically disqualified because one of the questions on a lot of the applications at the time was, "Have you ever quit a job without notice?" And
Right,
well,
okay.
yes, I have. Or where was your last employer? Why did you leave? How much notice did you give? Like, you know, and oh, no
So
notice.
nowhere
Well,
to
we're not
quantify it. Yeah.
interested. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, but I got stabbed. I mean,
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah, it's fair
that
enough.
matter? Yeah, right. Uh,
Wow. So in all of that, what would you say are have been your career highs so far? Obviously, there's more to come. Mm.
oh wow, yeah. I I'm I mean, one thing that I got clear on in my sabbatical is how grateful I am for the career that I've had. It's been very interesting and exciting. But one thing I'm very clear on is I'm going to work another 10 years before I retire, and I want them to be the best 10 years. I want to make a difference, I've probably repeated that a half dozen times since starting this job to people, just so they understand that I'm not here to tick check boxes or sit quietly. I want to make a difference. So I'm looking forward to that. I think one of the career highs was with that startup company as we were going into the IPO, because it was venture capital, just because of the culture of it, there were a lot of layoffs. It was like we'd lay people off, then we'd hire a bunch of people, then we'd lay them off, then so there weren't a lot of people to fill roles. So through the IPO process, I was able to get involved with the marketing company and with drafting the communication pieces for our first annual report and designing that and dealing with the legal team. And it was very exciting. It was very interesting, and it was even profitable. It didn't last for long. I mean, the competitors came along for that company, and it's now out of business. But at the time, it was a very exciting and a lot of fun.
Excellent. So we're coming short on time now. So what advice would you give to people who are looking to start out in their career? So in any area, really, it doesn't matter. In general terms, what would you say?
I I'm really advocating the days that matter process. Think about the days in your life that made a difference in who you are. I mean, the first one I think I posted was when the snowplow buried my car, which led to me having to crash on a girl's couch waiting for a train the next morning. And we've been married 34 years now.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
that's the sort of thing where it's like it's that moment, and that made such a difference in who I am and how my life has turned out. But it when you start thinking about those, you also start thinking about how you got to where you're at. And I think once we know and once we're comfortable with who we are and how we got here, that we can stop worrying about, like, interviews where we're trying to tick someone else's check boxes, where we can say, this is me, this is why I'm the way I am, this is how I am, this is what I could do for you. This is what I've done in other places, and what I can do, and finding a match rather than trying to be a match.
There you go. And you've got Jeff Young here, the LinkedIn guru, telling you days that matter. What a great concept. So thank you, Jeff. Thanks for commenting.
Thank
That's
you,
really
Jeff.
great. Are you
Great.
connected to
Thank you.
Jeff? He's a great person to be connected to if you're not. So he's actually
Yes,
coming
I am.
on in January. You are good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it sounded like it's all about your values, isn't it? And you're doing your research on the companies, making sure you're looking for the right places, and being true to yourself rather than check boxes, like you've said.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you again, John, for coming on. It's been really great to actually talk to you. We've
Absolutely.
messaged loads over the last couple of years, but actually talking,
Yeah.
this is the first, so it's been really good. So anyone that's watching, thank you. So I know Jeff's been watching, obviously. Celia and Lubna, thank you for your comments. Anyone else that's been watching, if you've got any questions, then please do feel to ask them, and we can go back to the chat and answer them later on. So for future shows, I'm basically inviting people on that are either really experienced in their careers and have made a switch, people that are starting out. I've got someone who's relatively new in his career in a couple of weeks. And next week, I've got Celia Thatcher. So Celia was actually head teacher at my son's primary school.
Oh,
So she lives relatively near me, but she's made a really interesting switch from teaching into cybersecurity sales. So I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. And Jeff's just put a comment then. I frequently advise people to identify their superpower. Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you very much. Okay, so yes, thank you, and apologies again for technical issues at the start, but I think it was only me that heard them from what the feedback is. And Paul saying, I've been watching. Thanks, really interesting. So thanks again to John, and see you next week. See you. Bye bye.
thanks, Sarah. Bye, everyone.